Whether you're new to pool and practicing the basics, or a more experienced player performing drills to improve your shot making and positional play, the Drill Partner is perfect for you.
Hey, welcome to this episode of Dogging It. What's up, Melina? How's it going, man?
Morning, buddy. You're pulling in the overtime the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's a pre-work edition for me. I figured let's get it in because when these events are on the other side of the planet for us, it's hard, admittedly, even for me to keep up with. And I know there's people out there that want to follow what's going on, want to see how their favorite players are doing. And right now, they're not just on the other side of the planet, they're in two different events on the other side of the planet. So it's getting real tricky. So I got people asking me for brackets and live streams and everything. So that's one of my goals today is in the chat to start pasting like links to the live stream and to the brackets because I know you get asked that a million times a day too.
Yeah, of course, millions of times a day, and I appreciate every one of them. I see a comment in the chat about my shirt, it being the Vince style shirt. But listen, I ended up turning turncoat. So this is actually my Shane Tyree of WPA shirt. It's not Shane Gamboning shirt. So
That's funny. Does Shane Tyree know that?
Shane Tyree knows he's the one
He
who
might
said,
change his name.
yeah, yeah. But
Oh
it's
man.
good events coming up, not coming up that are going on currently, Joe. We got the Qatar, which is in the, I think that'll end up being in the final 32 after today. We got the Peri Open out there in Vietnam, which will get down, which I think they've gotten 32 winners so far. By the middle of tomorrow, they'll be down to 32 losers as well, so 64
Yeah,
single.
hey, there's our buddy Sam in there. I wonder if he's out. Actually, Sam, let us know if you're able to get out. I know you're from that part of the world. Are you at the Qatar Open? Are you able to check out some of that action? I'd be curious to know. So, where do you want to start, Mike? You want to start with Perry or Qatar?
So let's see. I have Qatar queued up a little bit, and so I know they've been having their. I don't think they have live scoring per se, but they've been having at least somewhat of a website to be able to track the tournament brackets. So we'll bring this up. This is actually the first part of the section on the final 64, Joe.
Yeah, so some interesting matchups here in the final 64, and you'll see that some results have already been turned in. You got players that punched their ticket to the final 32. Victor, no real surprise. He's going to face Amir Ali. Josh Fillers playing a fellow named Mark Calagayan. Where's he from?
I have no idea, but Josh actually came from the one loss side, Joe. He lost early on in this tournament.
Yeah, it's interesting. That Mark's last name kind of reminds me of like Pagulayan. I don't know why, but I was just wondering where he's from. Uh, and then a match that I was kind of tuning into this morning, two heavy hitters, Chang Jung Lin and Albin Ocean, and Albin gets that one 9-8. He was down 8-6 when I tuned into that one. So
Albin
interesting.
showing some heart, that's for sure. I ended up catching that early this morning, and it was very funny because I made a post on Windows Open about the commentator, and it just had me cracking up. I don't know who the guy was, but he was an absolute riot. But kudos to Albin for coming through against Chang. It's kind of surprising him being out there in Qatar, just given the fact that he's in Mosconi Cup contention, Joe. So uh,
Yeah, there's a few of those, right? You know.
yeah. Without, and we expect it from some of the guys, just given the federations. But Albin was one of the ones that had me scratching my head, if I'm being perfectly honest. But just a bit of an update on all the other things that are happening in Qatar. I think sometime this morning or early this afternoon, we're going to try to have a show just dedicated to talking about the General Assembly that's going to be coming up uh, out there in Qatar. I think tomorrow. So Joey, Mike, Pinozo, and myself will be doing that. So just stay tuned. We'll get a time ironed out here pretty soon.
Yeah, another player that I'm a little bit surprised went to Qatar instead of to Vietnam. Tyler Steyer, he gets knocked out by Kazakis there, 9-6. Tyler's probably going to be a little unhappy with that result, but Kazakis is a great player. I'm sure he was hoping for better though there.
Who are you talking about, Tyler?
Yeah,
Yeah, of course. I mean, you go all the way out there, you get drawn into Kazakis, which we know, the nine ball guy that he can be. He's when Kazakis is in gear, he's easily a top, let's say 15 player on earth. So and unlike others, I mean, he primarily sticks to nine ball as far as like percentage wise, just the game that he plays more than anything else. So um, good fight by Tyler. He'll be on his way to Hanoi after this. But yeah, pretty good for Kazakis.
Who do you like coming out of this group, Mike?
Yeah, I mean it's very top heavy for me. I think if you're Albin, anything short of making it through to whatever it is, final eight is going to be a bust. Because if you're Albin, you're supposed to win the next two matches.
Hey, Mike, whatever you adjusted there messed up your audio.
You can't hear me now.
Now, when you lean forward, I did, but
Check. How about now? Can you hear me?
you normally have a big mouth, so let's hear it.
Can you hear me at all or no?
Okay, sounds better.
All right, let me up my gain over here. How about now, Joe?
Yeah, okay, that sounds
All
better
right.
to me.
So, yeah, if I'm Albin, anything short of making it through to sync to final eight is going to be a bust. We know Kazakis can be a bit of a roadblock there for him. If you think about, and I'm talking about the bottom half, if you think about guys who are in better form between the two, I think it's pretty much a coin flip. But up top, I mean, we're going to have a heavy matchup coming into the round of 16, Joe. We're looking to be on a Victor versus Josh. Route here pretty soon, and that could easily be a final.
Yeah, so I'm going to make a bold prediction here and say that when you look at this, the names most familiar to us are the European names, right? And it's looking like we could see those. What would that be? The round of 16. Albin, Alex, Josh, and Victor. But I'm going to make a bold prediction here and say that one of those guys loses and that we have a surprise, at least to us. I'm not as familiar with the players out there,
Hold
but
on,
I'm going
wait.
to say that we're not going to have all four of those guys advance to the final 16.
You're gonna go on a limb and say Albin, Kazakis, Filler, or Victor lose in this round they're in right now.
Yes, sir. I don't know which one. I'm just going to say one of that's going to happen.
I thought you meant one of them were going to lose on the way to the championship. I said, okay, that's a pretty bold statement. In this case,
That's my normal prediction.
that's not usually. I think Konstantin Stepanov can probably beat Kazakis. That would be the one where it might be a bit of a trap game for him, and that's all the way at the bottom. But yeah, up top, I don't see any way Josh and Victor losing. But to be fair to the other side, I mean, I didn't expect Josh to lose in the round that he did when the tournament started. So who knows, Joe? You may be Nostradamus over here.
That's what I'm going for.
All
Why
right,
don't you
let's keep on.
scroll down? Yeah.
Second part, the next grouping here. Dennis Grape moves on for Tunsky as well. Riku takes down a name, Alex Pagulayan, Joe making it through. Alejandro, your man.
Hey, Rico, let me tell you, let's pause for a second and give Rico his due. What a tournament this kid's putting in, right? To make it to the final 32 now. What is he, Mike? 16, 17 years old? We first
Somewhere
saw him
around
when he beat Sky Woodward out in Las Vegas, and we knew he was going to be a player, but now he's really stepping up. He's in the final 32 of this major event. So I think this is pretty good for the kid from Finland.
Well, he could be, what Moritz, is now, or what, a kid like Gangflot. I don't know how young Gangflot is, but he looks pretty young. He looks pretty wet behind the ears. We know Moritz is young, but he could be that next, young European star, and he, really popped on the map a few years ago when he beat Sky at the Predator Pro Billiard Series. He's followed that up, showing some consistency. When you're facing Alex, in a major event in knockout stage, this can kind of really just show where you're at, how tough you can really be, because everyone's going to be rooting for Paggy Lion.
Yeah, I think the difference the difference is excuse me, with Moritz and some of these other young players, they're young adults. We look at them and they're like they can grow a mustache. Riku, when we met him, was like an absolute kid, right? He was like reminding me of my 12-year-old now, where he was just a young kid who didn't really talk much, wasn't very outgoing, and his dad
Okay.
was like, "Yeah, he needs to get better at that." But man, the kid could play some pool. And so now he's in there banging it with the big dogs. And you got to think that he's looking at this match with Pagulayan as like a signature victory for him if he could get it. So I'm excited for the kid. I hope he does well, but it's a tall order.
Yeah, Alex seems to have a renewed spirit when it comes to pool. He seems to be more motivated, and just his enthusiasm is inspiring. And then if that follows with his game that's been around for the last 20 plus years, we know that he can be a threat in the tournament. I think a lot of people favor Alex to kind of break through, just given the way that nine ball kind of shifted from being more of a run out game to more moving heavy. This format is more traditional, but still, I mean, Alex and Rico is going to be a real good matchup.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun. And then in the bottom side, again, there's two strong Europeans there with Solnaki and Conrad. You would expect them to advance here, but also I don't know too much about their opponents. Um, it'll be interesting to see how they do in those matches.
So it looks like Kurol, I think, is a young Polish player, if I'm not mistaken. I think he won a world championship for an under 17 or 19. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Um, and interesting to see Sergey Lutsker because he's a Russian player, I believe. So seeing him in the final 64, and I want to say that gentleman up top in the first bracket we went through was the same. So
Well,
he
that's
had
all we need is another strong Polish player. Yes,
they
like
don't have
how
enough
many
of
do they
them.
have? Dozens not enough. But then if you look at Zolnaki's opponent, Mustafa Alnar, he knocked off Gangflot there 9-5. So you know the guy can play.
I think it just is a credit to how wide open this format can be. If it's one on the spot with a template, and if you're having that wing ball fly in with some consistency, I'm not exactly sure if they're implementing a 3 point rule. But yeah, big win for Alnar. I think Oliver has been around for a couple more years. He'll be a little bit tougher an opponent. But Gangflot has certainly been the flavor of the last few months on the World Nine Ball Tour.
Yeah. Want to move on down, Mike? Go down to the next
Well, who do
grouping.
you like coming out of this one?
Oh, I got to make a bold prediction here.
Bueller.
You know, I'm going to take. I think whoever wins that Grabe Fortunski match is going to make it out of this one. That's who I'm going with here.
To win, to get through this whole
Yeah.
these all these 8 play. Okay.
Yes. What are your thoughts?
um yeah, I'd probably pick Misko to come through if I'm just looking through these names that have already qualified. I think over the last 8 months or so, he's been showing just more consistency and form between all these players. Conrad is kind of, for me, just, I don't want to say falling off the map some, but just the names there, we recognize the name, but we haven't seen that depth in results that we're used to seeing, Joe.
Not
You know,
really making an impact, that
yeah.
we would have thought he would have at this stage, right? Um, it just
Well,
seems
because I
like, I
think
mean,
a year
he
ago,
did have a tough match against some guy at one of the U.S. Pro Billiard Series events that gave him a hard time, and he's never been the same player since. Now he beat me 4-0, but still 4-0, 4-0. But it was quite an event for him, and I'm
he
sure
hadn't recovered.
emotionally
He
he
hadn't
was
recovered. Yeah.
he
Yeah.
wasn't able to get back on track. But don't overlook Dennis. Dennis Grabe is playing good right now,
He is.
and he could beat Fortunski. And if he does, I kind of like him to make it through this grouping. So
Dennis seemed a lot more like just mellow when I saw him, which is great because, his game a few years ago, I thought he was like number 6 or 7 on the European rankings, maybe like 4 or so years ago. And then he kind of just, ain't seen him around a whole lot as far as results similar to Conrad. But, um, you know, it's so tough because the Polish players and the Europeans, for that matter, are going to run deep and they're going to be tough outs no matter who you are. So,
yeah,
um, but yeah, Joe, we're gonna have a whole hour long conversation about what happened to Conrad following that Joey Ryan
that victory, that easy victory he had over me.
that he was never the same since. Moving on, we got another Polish player up top, a guy who I am just super high
This
on
guy's
his
hot.
matchup. If I think about who's the guy who's gonna be maybe the next, I don't want
Victor.
to. Yeah, maybe the next Victor. The next. How hot Moritz is right now. I'm putting my money on this guy. I'm putting my
Two
money
years ago, you
on
weren't seeing
Misko.
his 2 years ago. Like you're not really seeing anything from the guy. You're seeing him on the bracket. And he's one of these guys that you're just automatically moving past. And it's now that's a mistake because he's winning big matches. He's getting there. He's doing his thing. Yeah. Thanks, Penozo.
The funniest line ever, Joe.
But Massio is a player. We saw it at the U.S. Open. I told you it was on like a outside table, and they had the pan tilt zoom camera, and he's like out of line on every shot on the hill, but just making difficult shots.
Yep.
He's a player. This kid, watch out. And I like him to win that match. And then we got Bader against Mika. That's going to be a good match up there. I'm going to lean towards Mika there in that one to create kind of a real tough match for the round of 16 between Massio and Mika Immonen, I think.
I don't think I can argue with you there, Joe. You know, Mika's been playing like the Mika of 10 years ago over the last 6 months. You know, and I really believe that out of these like older European players, he's one of the few that can realistically make a threat or make a run to kind of maybe next year. I mean, obviously. The window is not going to be open for too much longer, just as far as him being able to compete realistically. But his game is still shown that he's very much in form, Joe. And
Yeah.
as these players go and practice and get prepared for 4-inch pockets, when they transition back to something a little more, a little easier, 4.5, 5-inch pockets, then it just really opens it up to anyone because everybody's pocketing is just going to be that much sharper. So it'll really just be a few mistakes that'll make a difference.
Yeah, Ryan Villanueva in the chat mentions that Peru is the one that beat Tyler earlier on in this tournament. So that guy can play too. Moving down through Capito, surprisingly got blown away in the last round by Wojciech 9-1 after having a really good U.S. Open. I'm sure he's disappointed by that result. Wojciech will advance. We're not sure who his opponent is yet, at least according to the brackets. If anybody knows, hit up the chat and let us know. I don't really know Mahmoud Sharif, but Beasterbosch, we know he's a strong player from the Netherlands, probably most likely to advance there and play Wojciech. And then we have Lil Co coming off his U.S. Open victory against Michael Giorgio. So what do you think, Melina?
Say that name again.
Giorgio.
Man. Well, I'll tell you what,
He's gonna be my new Jeremy Sasse.
There you go. No, I think it's gonna be a Wojciech Koping Chung round of 16. The winner out of that, I like to advance. Although I'm hoping that Maciel comes through. If I'm being honest with you, I want to see this kid kind
Play
of live
Co.
up to. Well, not just that. I want him to beat Co. I kind of want him to see him take that next step because I think he's got the game to do it. In all honesty, I really believe that. And I think it's just a matter of time before he does eventually come on through. But Wojciech is not going to be a slouch. He's not going to be a walkover for Koping Chung. Both of them are former World 10 ball champions over the last few years. So that in the round of 32 is going to be, or sorry, the round of 16 is going to be pretty heavy as well, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting down to the point of this tournament where there's going to be some heavy hitters. There's going to be some great matches, and even with the Peri Open going on in Vietnam, there's still quite a few great players that made it to Qatar and made it to Vietnam. So we have two great tournaments to watch and pretty interesting here.
Yeah. Give me your pick.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
I'm my heart is saying that we're gonna go with Loco and Maciol to face off in the round of 8.
Let me know in the chat who you guys think coming out of this bracket. I think it's one of the toughest that we've seen so far, Joe.
Yeah, it is. It could be. We could be completely wrong about it.
Oh well, that wouldn't be anything different for us.
Copigny, his result is not updated. I'm not sure if they played that match yet. You would expect him to advance there. We have John Mora, who you guys dogged me out for taking in the U.S. Open Fantasy Draft, and he did pretty well and made it, I think, to the final 32 of that. He's facing Khalid Al-Ghamdi. Carlo Beato advances, and Wukong Lin from the bottom part of that bracket. Not sure who his opponent's going to be yet. What are you thinking about this one, Mikey?
I also heard that Diaz beat Oegaard, so it'll probably be Wukong Lin versus Diaz. So I just got a text about that.
How are you getting this info?
Listen, I got a lot of friends all over the world, buddy. My man, Shane Tyree, WPA. Why do you think I'm wearing the shirt, buddy?
All right.
No, look, that Khalid and John Moore matchup is one that I'll be keeping an eye on. I want to see what Khalid can turn into. You know,
How
he won
old's he, Mike? He's young too, right? He's 19 or 18.
Yeah, somewhere around there. He won the
Yeah.
SPB Open 2 years ago. He won a really big invitational event out there in the Middle East. I want to say it was last year for six figures. The kid's got a real strong game. He's a student of who am I thinking of, Joe? The former Mosconi Cup captain, the one that trains Tyler. Um,
Oh, Johan.
Johan, yeah, he's a Johan student. Um, and so you're in, and you're kind of you're in your region of the world, you know. So I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of fans are going to be rooting for you. I want to see him. I don't want to say so much live up to the hype, but I want to see what his ceiling can be, you know, and that needs to come with having a good run here, Joe.
Yeah, I think the chalk pick here is Copigny against Carlo Beato coming out of this
For sure.
grouping. I'm actually going to take an upset here, mild upset. I'll take Wu Kun Lin coming out of the bottom to face Copigny out of the top. Taiwanese matchup here in the final 8.
All Taiwanese. So you're thinking Carlo is going to go out?
Yep.
Oh, there you go, buddy. I think that might be it. The last 16, I want to say we'll start. Who knows? Day after
Yeah,
tomorrow.
our clocks are on the opposite, schedule, so we'll just have to kind of keep you guys updated as best we can. I did post the link to these brackets and a link to the live stream in the chat, so you guys can scroll through there and then you can check out that matchup. Mike, you want to jump over to the Peri Open and talk about that one?
No, my bracket's a little off. Give me a second here, Joe. Let me see if I can
Okay.
talk about that. Let me see. But the Peri Open going on in Vietnam right now. We got 32 winners that have come through. Let me see if I can bring this up, Joe.
Okay, I'll post the brackets. Yeah. I'll post the brackets. The brackets, last time I looked, were not quite updated yet, probably because, um, again, Digital Pool is on the other side of the world, and I'm posting a live stream in there as well. So, good matchups. You know, it's funny, Mike, because when the reason I knew they weren't updated is because that guy that tortured Shane in the practice rounds that we were watching, he
Right.
was playing another Vietnamese player, and he was losing like 7-5. And I'm like, geez, there must be tons of Vietnamese talent over there. And looking at the matchups, there's like Vietnamese players playing Vietnamese players. So they're going to have some of their countrymen getting deep in this event. It's going to be kind of cool to watch, get some new names on the scene.
Without a doubt. And I think you're going to see a lot of those lesser name Vietnamese players, just make an absolute deep run and threaten like in that final 8, final 4 kind of range, without a doubt. Joey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the this post that I made. It'll show the 32 winners, and then I'll bring
Okay.
up the digital pool in a little bit, and we'll go through the guys on the one loss side. All right.
Yep.
All right. So let
Oh,
me see if
wow.
I can. A little tough to read here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little
There we
bit.
go. There we go.
These are guys who have qualified. The list up top are guys who have qualified through today, Joe, including a lot of Americans. And I just want to get your thoughts on, who out of these guys are you surprised to see, and maybe not so surprised to see there that have already qualified through knockout.
Well, I don't know if I'm so much surprised to see, but I'm glad to see a player like BJ Ussery make it through. His name's come up for Mosconi Cup contention, and he's just a grinder. So I'm not really surprised to see his name there because he's going to fight it out for every single match. But what I need to see from him is winning a couple more matches now, getting real deep in this event. And I think Jeremy Jones would probably be looking for that too. How deep is he going to go and what kind of impact can he have? I haven't seen Max Eberle playing a whole lot. So to see his name here at this point is kind of a surprise. I actually made a comment. Max mentioned he was going to Vietnam and he was going to push forward towards his ranking points to try to make the Mosconi Cup. And I didn't mean to be a jerk. Dominic Dunn loved this, but I said, wow, that shows supreme confidence to wait till October to make your run at the Mosconi Cup. I wasn't trying to say like he hadn't done anything all year, but I just hadn't seen him out, hadn't heard much about him. So, but Dom shot me a message. He really liked that one. It was funny.
Well, I mean, for coming out, strong like that with that kind of post, he backed it up with the solid win today. The Filipino player who took out Shane, Max ends up beating Hill. So that's a very strong victory. If you're Max Eberle, I think he's an extreme long shot to make the team. But we've seen that given the rankings, that all it takes is one run, right? You don't have to leave it up to anyone. If you make a run on your own merit, you have a chance to earn your way onto Team USA or
I
Team.
want to say, what was that last year? I think it was the last year where they basically had the camps where they would invite players. Do you remember that, Mike?
Years ago.
Where Johan, I think, would invite players and took players to Russia. The year that Tyler Steyer won the Kremlin Cup, maybe 2018 or something. And Max was a finalist. Him and Mitch Ellerman were right there and had a chance to make the team and didn't make it kind of at the last minute, but they were close. So, he's been looked at before for it. And if he does something crazy out there, like, get to a semifinal, now all of a sudden you got to seriously consider him.
Yeah, without a doubt. But for me, outside of the two names that you mentioned, and I'm agreeing with you also when it comes to BJ. I mean, you're not traveling to the other side of the world if you're not looking to make a splash, Joe.
Yeah.
So a lot of costs going into traveling to Vietnam. A lot of expectations in crunch time if you're trying to make a spot on Team USA.
I
Looking
got,
at other.
hold on, Mike. I got one other observation here that I think is kind of important, right? When we're having matchroom events that are in the UK and Spain and Europe, people are talking about the Filipino players. Not many of them show up, or if they go deep, or if they don't, it's basically a tough spot for them, right? Because if they don't win the tournament, then people are questioning, oh, Anton Raga, is he really any good? And then you look at this, when the tournament is in their side of the world, look at how many Filipino flags are in there.
ton, a
A
ton.
ton,
Yeah.
right? And then if you look at players who, these are the ones that you had 16 winners, and then there's a bunch of other players that are already got through or are in position to get through who are Filipino as well that are not household names. So there's going to be someone from the Philippines that comes out of this tournament that becomes a household name, I will bet you.
Well, I think that given that Sharks has been streaming everything, and they've been taking advantage more of social media, these players that are maybe have been lesser known over the last few years to this side of the world are becoming more mainstream. The problem is, capitalizing once you have any kind of momentum, right? Because I feel like once the Reyes Cup gets announced and they start implementing points, all of these events are going to be that much more weighted for the Asian players.
Yeah.
So, and what country is going to have more pride of their players being out there than the Philippines, Joe?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not disrespect to anyone else, but the Philippines, they show love to the motherland more than anyone.
Yeah.
So
If you think about it, Mike, it would be interesting if they did a tournament that was like the Philippines versus Asia, which is comparable to the USA versus Europe, right? You have a continent versus a
that's
country.
actually a good idea,
Well,
Joe.
the Philippines are actually the only country that I can think of that you'd be in a situation where you're not even like the USA, like who do you pick? You're more like Europe. Who do you pick? Like so many incredible players, and who's my five going to be? That would be an interesting kind of
Who would you bet on,
matchup.
Joe, if it was Philippines versus Asia?
I mean, I guess the Philippines. I don't know that you can build a super team out of Asia, no doubt about it. I mean, you have Taiwan, you have Singapore, you have Vietnam. There's tons of great players out there that you could build a great team with, but you could build the best team or one of the very best teams in the world with just the Philippines, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I could not agree with you more. And I want to say it was that um, they had the Kings Cup a few years ago, where I want to say the Philippine team ended up winning. I could be
You know
mistaken.
what's interesting? That one might be more of a matchup of like home field advantage. If you have an event in the Philippines and under the conditions they typically play there versus an event in Taiwan, I understand in Taiwan the tables are super tight. You can't find like anything bigger than a 4-inch pocket in all of Taiwan, I hear. So you know what I mean? Like going back and forth between those two locations could create like a serious home field advantage. Be interesting.
I'm excited to see who's going to come out here. We haven't seen Chua in a little bit. The elder statesman and Warren Kiamko is on this list. Jeff DeLuna, who's been playing very good lately, and then of course Anton, who everyone he's living up to the billing, Joe.
Can
You know,
can I give you some credit, Mike? I've been teasing you for 2 years about your love affair with Max Lechner, but that guy just gets deep in tournaments. He just gets it done. And once again, he's qualified. He's through in this event, and I wouldn't expect him to lose his first match here, no matter who he plays against. He's just that solid a competitor. So
Well, I want to see Max get to another final, and I want to see him finish the job. That's the main thing. Getting there against Fran last year at the U.S. Open was great, and there's a lot of positives to take away from that. I've been telling Max for since the first time I met him a few years ago that I thought he was a top two player in Austria. And then it just so happens that like a few months after I tell him that, the Austrian team of Mario and Albin win the World Cup of Pool. And I'm like, well, buddy, you got dealt a bad hand. You're not going to be in there anytime soon. But I think he's earned his way on. And I think he's solidifying that spot. And in my opinion, taking over Albin's position. I think Mario's probably had more consistency, but
what?
as far as Max making his way onto that team, I think it's happening, or I think it's already happened. And I think we're going to see that here this year. I don't know that, but I would just the old eye test, Joe.
I don't know. I'm not ready to supplant Albin Ocean for Max Lechner, but he's a great player, and I just wanted to give you credit for your love affair with him. Did you send him flowers for this event? Is he
I gave him a high five from across the
chocolates?
world. There you go. All right, let's cruise down. These other named players, or these other players, are have also qualified through Winterside as well through this event. Billy Thorpe, Joe, leads the way right
Love seeing
there.
his name up there. Love seeing his name up there, fighting through, making it to the qualifying stages. That's a good thing for Billy. It's a good thing for USA Pool and his chances of making the Mosconi Cup team. So I'm happy to see that. A lot of other good names up there, though, and this is where it gets down to like some of these Filipino players that I was telling you about that aren't household names that
Yep.
could develop into household names from here. I know I've seen him up in some of the Sharks matches. Michael Feliciano, Kyle Amoroto. We saw him out at one of the Matchroom events.
Monster
Yeah,
player, Joe.
but then like Jean Lagarde, I don't know that guy. I'd love to get to know that guy and see what he does out there. It's going to be interesting. So I like seeing all these Filipino flags out there, and I can't wait to see some of these guys compete.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I want to see how they do on bigger stages. The last time we saw a kid like Kyle, he defied logic when it comes to transitioning from playing somewhere else versus playing in a matchroom event on tight equipment. He didn't seem to have any kind of growing pains or rust or whatever you want to call it. So I'm really excited to see how well that he'll do out there. But they're so deep, man. We just talked about the Philippines a little bit ago. I mean, they're so deep with talent. They sent so many players over there to Vietnam to go rob the place. They're wanting to leave the country with the cash. So and I got a feeling that they will, not just in this event, but I also like their chances in the Hanoi Open as well. But a lot more marquee names, Joe, including Francisco Sanchez Ruiz, Europe's number one overall pick. I don't know where his game is going to be at right now. He seems to kind of be, I know he was the first overall pick, but he's not hitting on all cylinders like he was a year ago heading into December.
Yeah, Mike, I do sales for a living, right? And when you have a great year, that's great. But then it sets you up to have a bad year the next year, right? Because they expect that
Especially if they're
same level of performance. And
right.
that's what's going on with Francisco. I mean, it's not like he's playing bad. He's
No,
doing well, but he's just not insane like he was the year before. And so just by comparison, we sit there and say, hey, he's not having the same type of year. Well, of course not. Nobody could do that
no.
sustained for 2 years in a row. And then the other thing that I look at when I look at this list, Mike, is the age. We talked about it with the US Open. I said, look, pool is becoming a young man's sport. When we look at the ages of these players, we look at the players like Mickey Krause and these younger players that we're seeing, Sanjin and all of these guys. It's changing. Pool is changing. Rico, we mentioned from the Qatar Open. We're starting to see, if I had stats on it, I would tell you that the average age of like quarterfinalists in major tournaments has probably decreased like 5
Sam
years
got the job.
in
Salmon
the
was
last decade.
for us.
What's that?
I said, get Michael Salmon on the job. He'll be able to find
Yeah,
out.
I bet you it has, Mike, because now we're constantly seeing younger players, making an impact in these events, and the game is changing. I
Well,
remember when I first started watching pool, you're watching like a 40-year-old Johnny Archer against a 40-year-old someone else. It's changed now. It's younger
well,
guys.
there's also guys that are define that as well. Like a Ralph Suke, who went deep in the U.S. Open. You got guys we just mentioned Mori Kiamko a little bit ago. There's a lot of players that are not a lot of players. Mika Immonen comes to mind as well. Who are these older players that are just continuing to fight and still showing that they're not here for just to be relevant. They're here to compete.
Look,
And
there's a sprinkling of those guys, right? But I'm saying more and more we're seeing these younger players. Maciol, we mentioned it in the previous event. These younger players that are out there really doing some big things. And I'm telling you, it's changed. The dynamic has changed. And there's a few comments in here. Jenny Ann talks about players getting up earlier and being younger. Well, the stamina effect of these tournaments now is big, and it's we've seen the European players for a while treat it like a sport and train for it. And I think we're starting to see that. I think we're starting to see that with these younger players, they can handle the stamina. They can, be mentally focused for longer, and it gives them a bit of an advantage. It's becoming a younger person's sport. So
No, I mean, look, you got Moritz right there, who's been on a tear the last month and a half, and I think he'll be around for quite a long time. Mickey Kraus, who just came off a brutal loss to Francisco out there at the U.S. Open, but he was someone that was kind of floating around where you're thinking, man, where is he going to end up on the map?
yeah,
Where is he realistically at? And I think that he's showing that it's maybe higher than we gave him credit for previously. More younger Europeans like a Sanjin who went deep. We talked about Alexa, who's coming off a semifinal of the U.S. Open. So many guys who are in their early 20s that you're right that it's more their game versus anywhere else. But there's also these seasoned veterans like an Alex, guys who are in their 30s, that are also hanging around, Joe. So I think it's
yeah,
a pretty good balance. And meanwhile, you got a guy who just turned 40 in SVB who's still pretty relevant all these years later.
yeah. Well, at any rate, two great events for you guys to follow. We just wanted to get on here and give you guys kind of like our thoughts on them, share the links to the brackets and the live streams. Hopefully, you guys get a chance to check out some of the matches. And Mike, we'll probably get back on here tomorrow to update these two events. You did mention that in a couple hours we're going to go live again. We're going to talk about the General Assembly that's coming up, and kind of the implications for some of these players.
You got to run already? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, kind of, sort of, soon.
Okay. I just wanted to make
Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I was gonna just browse through the one loss side, just kind of see guys who are.
Yeah, let's do it. Can you bring it up?
Yeah. Let me
I
bring
got
it.
5 more minutes.
Okay, we'll just kind of we'll breeze through this real quick. All right, here we go, Joe. We got Niels Villafuerte, the guy who took Shane down in the first round on the TV table. You got Labutis that's out here. Alexa, who's fighting for Mosconi Cup spots. Patrick Gonzalez, Chang Yu Lung, AJ Manas, the strong Filipino player. David Alcade, Joe, another guy who wants to make a run or who wants to lock up that spot for Team Europe as well, buddy.
Yeah, yeah. No, incredible players there. Gerson.
Let me take a look here, see who else. Delgado. Who else seen here? Tim DeRuiter, Tobin Lon, Matt Edwards, Sharik. Let's see here. Who else? Who else kind of stands up to you, Joe? We got Dennis on
Well,
the last side.
all the way down the bottom, we got Shane Van Boning, don't we?
Let me see here. You got Oscar. Who's Oscar's looking to who's looking to capitalize off of that U.S. Open run as well. I'm guessing Shane, if my internet will let me scroll down, which I don't think it is.
Yeah,
So
I got Shane down at the bottom there. The match you
there
can't
we go.
see against Win Dang Bak.
Oh, that
So.
guy's a monster. You don't even know.
Hey, I know you're close with Oscar. You talked to him. I saw his post after the match he lost. He seems like he's in a good headspace. Can Oscar win a few matches here and get deep in this event?
I think he can. You know, he's showing a lot of consistency out of nowhere for me. If I'm being honest, you know, he's kind of going into the U.S. Open. I don't really know what to expect when it came to his game. You know, he changed equipment. Not been playing as much as some of the other guys, just regularly. But he had a real good showing against Max Lecter. Loses that in a heartbreaking way. Max kicked like Efren during that match as well. You know, he beat Chen, the strong Taiwanese player at the U.S. Open, losing to Jeff Ignacio 9-7. I mean, Jeff is a great player. He's just
He
coming off
is.
Chinese 8 ball win out there, and I want to say maybe it was Vietnam just a couple weeks ago. So
He's a player we haven't seen in the U.S. too much lately, but a few years ago he was making his rounds, and he looked like the next best thing coming out of the Philippines.
there's so many.
So
So there's so
yeah,
many of them.
it's
Uh,
ridiculous.
we'll post the bracket links to both tournaments in the comments as well and in the description. We appreciate all you guys for tuning in. I think, Joe, we're going to try to go live again this morning or like in a
Yeah, I
couple
think
hours.
so. So keep your notifications on. Guys, if you want to support us, head on over to patreon.com/dogging it. Or if you're interested in sponsoring a show, reach out to Melina Mike. You can hit him up on Facebook Messenger.
General Assembly talk in a couple hours, so make sure and keep your notifications on. It's going to be me, Panozo, and Joey, and you are not going to want to miss it. We'll see you guys
Don't
later.